Right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Before we begin our second conversation, second part if you may, on the passage of the 2024 appropriation bill, let's take these excerpts from our first conversation as compiled by Abdul Salam Jibril.
We are saying that, yes, the budget is good on face value. It addresses the critical areas of need of the nation. But moving forward, I think we have to start looking at how realistic, how we can twinkle as we go along with it. I am of opinion that the increment of 1.2 billion is in order. There's nothing that stops us from doing that. The capital expenditure, look hopeful now with the additional borrowing. The recurring expenditure is there. Our debt servicing is another issue that I think this government has tried to reduce it from 6% to a paltry down to 3 or 4%, which is still okay. But my take is this: it's also important to interrogate our debt servicing so that we're having to use our revenue to service debt. I think this is a critical area I want to like. I also see in the budget our deficit, but on the whole, the budget looks hopeful.
You know, the budget is built on certain assumptions, and the major assumption, one of them, is that exchange rate will be 800 naira to a dollar, when we know we are selling foreign exchange at over 1,000. So that itself is a shock absorber. You know, the government doesn't want to bring in so much money into the system because it will fuel inflation. So there is shock absorber in the budget, and with the seriousness I know President Tinubu pursues issues, I know he's going to actually focus on it, and I believe he's going to implement it assiduously. So I think this budget is realistic. In fact, if anything, it's very, very conservative. Like I said earlier, it could have been much higher, but I think government doesn't want to overinflate the economy so as not to have a negative repercussion.
All right, thank you, Abdul Salam Jibril, for that package. And as Victor said earlier on, we started this conversation yesterday on the passage of the 2024 Appropriation Act, and of course, most specifically, the topping of that budget, bringing it up to 28 point, some fractions, trillion naira. Okay, let's welcome our guests for today's discussion. Niyi Akinsejo is, of course, a familiar face. He's an investment and financial analyst and a good friend of the House. In fact, I should say NTA Good Morning Nigeria analyst. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to
yes,
you.
we are owning you.
Of course.
Listen, you go nowhere.
I consider that.
All right, thank you. Also here with us is Yushau Aliu again. This new year, we have decided to, of course, I don't want to use own again. Before Victor would. Thank you, Yushau, for joining us.
And Happy New
thank
Year.
you for always being our partner.
Thank you, and thank you for the hangout. Thank you.
And we have also been joined on the program today by Ogbonna Okuku, who is an investment and economic development expert.
Yes,
a pleasure to welcome you as always.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So,
Yes,
let's begin this conversation. Perhaps I should begin with me and say, what is your first reaction to the 2024 Appropriation Act?
No, thank you very much. My first reaction was, I would say it's a good direction. And in taking that position, I had to contextualize the passage, both at the proposal level, the proposition level, that's the budget 2024, at the proposition level and at the passage level, and of course, the eventual signing off on it by Mr. President. First, what is a budget? It's an appropriation act, so it's a law. It is also a policy. It is also a framework. But most of the time, these three characterization of the budget don't align. So when they don't align, we have challenges, of implementation. Because the implementation of a budget is not supposed to be the implementation of a federal government policy. It is supposed to provide a framework for other tiers of government and for other sections or segments of the economy to follow. So that is why it's a framework. It's an economic framework. So to a large extent, I am seeing the alignment of these characterizations in 2024. Why? For the first time in a long, long time, we are seeing capital expenditure as proposed higher than recurrent. And we have also seen an active engagement of the proposal by the National Assembly that moved a proposed recurrent at 10.2 trillion to 8.7 or 8.88 trillion, thereabout. So now that's a conscious, deliberate approach for me by the federal government to say, going forward, we want our capital expenditure to be higher than our recurrent expenditure. And the basis, of course, for economic development, as everybody who knows anything about economy will say, is that you have capital, because it is capital that drives development. It is capital that enables businesses. It is capital that either at the level of bolts and armor, at the level of human capital and all that, that reflects or manifests development in the real sense of it. So for me, that is the framework. I also know, as a matter of fact, that there is also that bandwagon effect. So it's likely that almost states in 2024 will follow this line. Which would also impact, the economic environment
at that level. Okay, let's thank you for your opening contribution, Nii. Always insightful as always. Let me again bring in Ogbonna Okuko. Nii has talked about alignment. The additional, figure of 1.2 trillion. Was spread across some, sectors, like he pointed out, were reduced. The recurrent was reduced. The little was stopped for capital, but statutory transfer was upped, and all that. So I'd like you to look at, because this is what everybody has been talking about. We had discussed the budget presentation by Mr. President before it was assented to. That's the 27.5 trillion. Fine. But this addition, a lot of people are asking for the justification, the justifications given. Are they realistic?
Okay, so when Nii was speaking, he said something. He said that the budget can also be seen as policy. Now, when it comes to policy, there is always, when there's a need, then there's a formulation, and then for implementation to be easy, you must have all critical stakeholders come together. So what happens most of the time is, which is what we've been advocating for, a situation where, yes, there are 3 tiers of government, there are 3 arms of government, but when it comes to fiscal and monetary policy management, there are only 2. The monetary policy and fiscal policy. And when it comes to fiscal policy, everybody in this other 3 tier of government are part of it. So if the executive sits to do a budget without having all the critical stakeholders involved in it, I can tell you for a fact, you always have these issues. Why? Because a budget that is designed without having that critical part of the fiscal policy managers, who are the National Assembly, be part of the formulation. Anytime you get to the point of presenting them, analyzing, scrutinizing the budget before passage, there will always be that inclusion. Why? Because they will always tell you, or the National Assembly members will always tell you, we are with our people. There are critical infrastructure that is required. There are basic things that we need. And then if you don't accommodate those things, they cannot go back to their constituents and tell their constituents, this is what we're able to do. So before I start to implement, I need to be part of formulation. And if them being part of the critical stakeholders in the formulation, which is making the budget, what is streamlining the budget to what will suit what an average constituent need, at the end of the day, you solve the problem. So back end, if you backtrack, if the National Assembly members, the Appropriation Committee, are part of that budgeting process, it becomes a lot easier.
What was the rationale of presenting the MTEF in the first place?
Now, this is where it comes from. This entire thing is still within that framework, because the MTEF is like, this is the architectural design I'm going to use for economic development. Yes. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now we look at it back, we'll go back and forth, and everybody agrees, and then we'll say this is how we're going to move. Now, when the budget comes, which is now being able to allocate percentages of envelopes of funds to each critical area of the economy, then this is where we'll now say, okay, my constituents will need so. Because if you sit down, let's say Ministry of Water Resources sits down and then designs a budget for Lantan local government, and then the federal, the senator or the House of Rep member says, what you are trying to do in Lantan local government is not what we need in Lantan, because I just spoke to the chief in Lantan who says he wants so. So that is where they now begin to move those projects from A to B, because they are the ones who interface with the people more. Because the structure in Federal Ministry of Water Resources does not give that liberty, that interaction, that engagement with the constituents. So this is exactly what happens. And again, that also brings us to, you asked another very critical question, the statutory transfers. Why did it increase? Because some of these things are they're obligatory, and they are by law. So if we notice that there are things that you need to move funds into because of obligation, by law, that's why they are lawmakers.
Fine, good. The justification that you have provided is understandable, but others may also look at it from implication on the economy, implication on other economic, indices at the moment, which is not rosy for the country, and that's why you've been shifting, from one end of the chair, for you, you always look at it from the layman perspective. What does this mean for the economy?
First of all, they say your name defines your character. The budget 2024 is a budget of renewed hope. And when we take macroeconomic components in the budget, and we also check the growth component of the budget, you see a shifting ground where, for instance, you are targeting prosperity when inflation is increasing. You are targeting GDP growth of 3.88% when there is high unemployment. So basically, the macroeconomic component in budget 2024 speaks volume in terms of provisions of different input to different economic structure. But what is not friendly always, that stop achieving prosperity, is you go back to elementary economics. You go back to production possibility frontier, where you now check, are you investing in security, that is military, or are you investing in butter, which is civilian good? So the component, the highest provisions is made in security. And once you targeted the highest accruals into security angle, there is still challenge to the economy for prosperity. The simple logic here is that if you are to make production, agriculture to increase, you need to provide security. The best assumption for the economy to perform better, to cater for prosperity, is you must assume that the entire environment is secured. But when you are giving so much to military, these are guns. These are monies that are going out of the economy. These are investment that is also taking lives of the same people within the same economy. So, in my own, of course, it's a challenging budget, but I quite agree that the president is aware that the people, that the citizens are suffering. And he has attempted severally to show a bold step taken in trying to bring certain economic reforms, which in his understanding will guide the economy better to have more funds. But these funds should not be used all the time for security reasons. They are supposed to be based on MTF. They are supposed to be a time frame at which you take care of the security of the economic environment, then you begin to invest. If you take advanced economies, for instance, the United States economy today, their priority is on health provisions all the time. $6.9 trillion is being targeted for 2024. And if you look at the volume of that to the welfare of the individuals, that is to provide health. So in our own case, based on what we saw and based on the provisions, our own finance minister and coordinator of the economy has a great job to do, because the president has given a mandate where periodically they are going to check the updates of implementation. And this update of implementation is very necessary, because we don't want a situation we have December, January calendar, and the National Assembly have done one of the best approach in terms of clearing the budget for national attention. And also the president also has stood on ground to make sure that this December calendar picked up 1st January. So, but what we are hoping is that the performance should not be 40% at the end of December. Yes, we want performance to be an average of 80 and above. That will help the economy. That will help prosperity.
That would be marvelous.
I had also expressed that worry that it's not about the figures. What is the level of performance at the end of the day? When you see the huge figures, are we likely to earn it? Now, some members, some National Assembly members had also expressed worry, expressed concern about the pegs. 800 naira to $1. Are we there? Can we get there? These are concerns. If we are unable to get there, then we are beginning to run in deficit from day one. And so you talked about security and giving a lot to security and all of that, but you realize that you cannot develop when there is insecurity. Surprises like you get in Plateau, like you will get in Imo. If you don't take care of these things, yes, the monies go out because we don't make the gadgets that they will procure. But if you don't take care of security, the citizens can't enjoy the rest of it, whether education, health, and the likes of them. They will keep getting destroyed and the citizens can't enjoy it. And so you don't see the justification for trying to deal with security, because we know that this security issues exist.
What I am trying to portray here is that the challenges of our preparation, before you get prosperity, President Buhari in 2020 was very ambitious to have collective prosperity. And here we are today. President is lamenting, there is aware, his party is aware that people are suffering. And when that is brought to a table, we have to check where are we getting it wrong as government, as people. We cannot continue to kill ourselves and then to introduce concepts that will now, the funds that are to be channeled for healthcare will be channeled to security. That is the challenge I'm trying to portray. We as people, some of us who are analysts, the media, the traditional institution, the clerics, we have to come and tell ourselves the truth, that until we change our attitude to live as citizens. One fundamental factor, if you are to make cost implication of losing Mondays in the southeast, and what that means to our prosperity as a nation, you cannot quantify it. And it is not the federal government that will change that. It is we people. So, but what basically I'm trying to bring is that for people to understand that before we get what we want from our economies, until when we begin to accept the economy and become friendly to the economy, so that we will go back, we cannot go back to the elementary class where you have challenges, you either to channel your entire taxes to security, or you channel them to butter, which is civilian good.
All right, Bishop, I get you now.
Yes.
Let me get back to Niyi and ask what you make of the appropriations to critical sectors like health, education, and the likes. Sufficient? Of course, given the total budget. Agencies across the world will talk about certain percentages to education, certain percentages to health, and all of that. Are we there?
No, we're not there yet, but again, sometimes we review these figures in alienation of related agencies. So if you look at education, for instance, we should not review just Ministry of Education. In education, you have SUBEB, you have TED Fund. In fact, TED Fund in the whole hierarchy of the budget has one of the highest capital allocation, you know, and which was, for me, very impressive, because it means that the federal government is saying we are going to develop the boat and hammer, I mean the structures in the tertiary institutions and all that. Then, of course, you also look at the Ministry of Health, look at the health consolidation, the health programs, and the vote, and that is 1% of the consolidated revenue, you know, of the federation. So we should not just look at the ministries alone. We look at the agencies and the departments, what have been allocated to them, for us to have a broader view of the allocations. I think so far so good, and the idea of the 800 to $1 for me is realistic. I am a trend follower. I follow trend. Over the last 6 months, we have seen depreciation in the real sense of it, so much that even at the official markets, $1 to a naira went as high as 1,009 at the point in time, and at the black market went as high as 1,300 at the point in time. Now we are seeing a reduction, you know, to 1,200 plus, the lower margin of the hundreds of the 200 plus. So I think with the appropriate policy, and I think that policy is being implemented as of now, it's likely, not in the immediate, but over the next 4 months at the official market, first to achieve that 800 naira. And then going forward, before the end of 2024, it's likely the black market will also fall under the 1,000 naira range.
How is that possible? Because I'm also wondering, because the target is to bring down inflation to 21.4%. Right now we're doing about 27 point something percent, and 28. And at 750. The federal government was targeting 21 point something percent. That's and I'm wondering, now you say 800. So how are we likely to still meet that target? And how is that likely to also impact on, you know, the macroeconomy, inflation, for instance?
You see, the relationship between foreign exchange, you know, and inflation is principally about exacerbated inflation rates. So the higher your foreign exchange, the most likely your inflation rate will be higher, because we have an import-dependent economy.
Yes, that's what I'm asking, because the National Assembly upped the exchange.
But we are looking at what the rate now is in the markets. The rate in the market is above 800. To even achieve the 800 naira to $1 rate is what some people would describe as a challenge. That is a challenge. What we have now, over the last 4 weeks, we've had over 900 at the official market. Either at the autonomous foreign exchange market or at the exporter-import market. And at the black market, we've had consistently over 1,200. So it's like an ambitious target to say that we are going to make it at 800. So if you actually we are able to reduce that rate to 800, it will reflect on the inflation rate.
But Niyi, I'm sure we heard you when we were discussing the 750, peg, and everybody seemed to agree, that 750 was, a stable, a comfortable peg, very realistic. So what changed from 750, and what was the prompt for the National Assembly, to increase it?
One, the National Assembly was looking at a realistic threshold. Just like I said, achieving 750 is a challenge. It means that you have to deploy so many instruments to reduce that threshold from 1,000, for instance, to what we are projecting. But again, there's nothing wrong in that increment. We need to be broad-minded about our figures, seriously. You see, at 800, it means that you will have more money to spend on the economy. And if you are talking about budgets, a national budget, you must also look at your purchasing power parity. When people raise issues around, our budget is $32 billion, it is not so much. It is just this figure that is so much. We now have 28 trillion and all that. I might say, okay, if you live 100,000 naira lifestyle in Nigeria, 100,000 naira lifestyle, which is not up to 1,000, it is not up to $100 now. In today's Nigeria, if you are living 100,000 naira lifestyle, it's not up to $100. You will need $633 in the US to live the same lifestyle in the US. So if you have, that is why pegging is not actually the right, approach. You open up your economy. Let your money come, because your money, you are living with that money within your environment, not in an American environment. So if you have the opportunity to have more access to your money, to your currency, and they can do more for you, why not? Because you are quoting figures in this economy. You are not quoting for the American economy. So if we have 800 naira more to spend, why don't we?
But I was wondering, as you spoke, achieving 750 was already a challenge. Is achieving 800 not?
It's even better now, because it means that you have a Brita, a 50 naira Brita, because you will need to get to 800 before you get to 750.
What do you think?
Because I think basically when he's driving at is the fact that we're also looking at, there's also inflow that will be exchanged to give you this naira that we're talking about. So let's say you sell your crude oil and then you bring in $100 million. So if you exchange that $100 million at that exchange rate at 750, it gives you 750 million. But if you exchange at 800, it gives you 800 million. So at the end of the day, you have more money to plug into different components of the economy. So I think that's where we are.
But you're talking about selling crude oil, and which is of course where our hopes are hinged on, and at the moment
that's all we ever think about.
Yes, and at the moment, the projection is 1.7. The target.
Yeah.
Yes, billion barrels per day.
Yeah.
A million barrels per day, but rather. And so far, we hear the good news, if I may call it, that the Port Harcourt, is up now, at least. Crude is now being, delivered to it, for refining purposes. Now, if that happens, we will be able to meet our 1.7, million barrels?
Of course you will. You will definitely. So what you do is you task the IOCs to do more, because you have your OPEC, the OPEC expected exports window, and then you also have your domestic consumption demands. So any which way, which does not affect it, each of the windows. So what you do is you have a conversation with your IOCs, with your partners with them. NNPC, they are partnering with NNPC. So you deliver to your domestic consumption propeller, and then you can still handle your exports. So what you need is just proper security and adequate investment in that entire ecosystem, so that they pump out more. Because whether you like it or not, they need it. They need the more they pump out, the more money they make as IOCs, and then we also. It becomes a win-win for both both participants.
Let me ask you, Shao. Can we keep talking about oil because that's all we have apparently, but forex is a challenge, and the only way we are talking about these pegs because it's all oil dependent.
Yes.
Can we talk about industry? What do we need to do? And how does this budget address industry, manufacturing, for instance, in the country, which has the capacity to give us more than just looking at oil?
Yes, Mr. President has a good approach to that angle, because he has been to Germany and has invited seamen to come and add value to our energy requirement. Once you don't have energy requirement, you don't have a secured environment, you don't have potential investors, you are in trouble. You cannot industrialize. No history. The history of the Europeans, the history of the Asian tigers, the history of the Chinese revolution, all is attached to industry. I bet you can grow industry when you grow the small and medium enterprises when they are functioning, when the microfinance are functioning. And once you are now, it's just a different opinion as regard to the pegging of 800, 750. The National Assembly is just being so intelligent enough, based on history, for the executive to peg low rate and then more income, and at the end the distribution and or allocation of resources becomes a subject of concern. But however, all these macroeconomic ingredients, is relied solely on the performance of the central bank, the MPR, the decision to MPR to attract investors, the decision to MPR to reduce inflation, and also the decision of macroeconomic growth rate of the bank. Let me give you a clear explanation on this particular exchange rate pegging. If Port Harcourt, that's on an assumption, if eventually Dangote began to produce, and we also take the production for consumption, we are expecting the resources that elsewhile the potential importers are taken from that window will begin to have liquidity. If Port Harcourt refinery picks up and we also take that production, we're expecting that to respond to our liquidity challenge. And don't forget the fact that also Mr. President has been to Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabia is attempting also to make an intervention, but you don't know through which angle for the liquidity. So immediately when we have that liquidity, it is expected that the exchange rate, Naira, will begin to appreciate a bit, so that the purchasing power of income groupings in Nigeria will begin to breathe. And also you control inflation. There is no way when income remains stagnant over a long period of time that you expect GDP to change. You cannot also forget the fact that Mr. President is targeting an economy in the next 3 years with $1 trillion economy. And all this require efficiency in maintaining liquidity. And that is why we call on the central bank to educate Nigerians on the recapitalization exercise. so that if you as an investor and you want to invest in agri-processing industry, you can access within the domestic market. We have seen most of the provisions in terms of reducing borrowing. We have seen some elements of reduction in deficit based on the fact that there is an increase in accruals. But that accruals has to do with performance of the economy, notwithstanding the taxes you pay, the pay as you earn. And I'm happy that Mr. President recently, yesterday, podcast highlighted that possibly he is intending to give a living wage for the first time in the history of Nigeria. But how can that work?
That's another. That's a big question, and we will look at it.
Living wage is another question.
We will look at it if the feasibility of that, happening this year. But let me bring in Niyi again, and I'm just wondering. I'm still staying on our oil production, and I'm wondering how this budget is likely to impact on availability and cost, of, petroleum products and in the country. If Port Harcourt is expected to produce 60,000 barrels per day, and the first half is only what has been done now, the first half of the rehabilitation work is only done. I don't know what Dangote is doing. Is that enough for us to, to impact on supply and cost? That's one. And two, are we likely, because I presume the 1.2 trillion funded partly from proceeds from these, I don't know. No? So where is the trillion going to come from?
The 1.2 trillion is principally based on the projection, and I want us to frame that the term peg. We are no longer in the peg economy. As long as we're talking of foreign exchange, it's no longer pegged. And that's why I said it's a process. It has to be about deployment of monetary policies and all that to get to that. So the government is projecting that in this year, the exchange rate will be stated at 800. Initially, the proposal was it will be stated at 750 naira to a dollar. But now said, in consultation with the National Assembly, I thought, okay, let us make it 800 naira deliberately. Because with 800 naira, you are expecting a certain volume of foreign exchange into the country. So when you exchange, you have more money, And I stay by that. Because for me, it is not about comparing our living level, in Nigeria to what happens in developed economy. We must look at our economic existence within our domestic economy. So that's 800, the 1.2 trillion will be generated, one, from the exchange gains, what you call exchange gains, more or less. Then they also reduced certain expenditures, especially how do I call it now, the professional bodies. More than 200 billion naira is being saved from taking out normal allocations that go to professional bodies. For instance, Council of Engineering Registration, Council of Engineering Registration of Nigeria, CORE. I wouldn't imagine why would federal government be giving the Council of Engineering Registration Council, allocation every year, when indeed engineers have to pay for licenses, have to pay for practicing license, have to pay for examinations and all that every year. Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria, allocation every year. The Advertising Practitioner Council of Nigeria, allocation every year. These are waste in the real sense of it. So the fact that we have people now who are using torchlight to look at our expenditure profiles, to see those ones that are waste in the real sense of it. It's better. So those ones are being saved now and then being reallocated or directed into more functional, well-needed aspects of the economy. So the 1.2 trillion is also in addition to, they are adding it to our most needed capital expenditure. And we keep talking about that. That is what drives the economy. Power, road, and even the soft social capital, education. So,
I asked the question about meeting, our local consumption
yes.
because of the issue of foreign exchange that is being expected. Because if we are not able to control or to meet our local crude, consumption, then we'll continue to import crude. And if we continue to import crude, it impacts on the foreign exchange.
We don't import crude.
We
import finished
refined products.
We import we import PMS. That's what we import.
Yes, once we continue to import that, then it impacts on the available foreign exchange.
To the extent that we use money, our foreign exchange generated currency, to import this finished product, which does not sound logical for a jurisdiction that produces oil. It does not. But of course, we also know that over the last 10 to 12 years, we've had issues with e-estate. We have issues with security, and to that extent, it impacted so much that the non-state actors that were taking crude oil, were taking more crude oil from our crude than the federal government that has the right, to export crude. So, we are seeing a new trend now. We have done as low as 900,000 plus, sometimes in 2023. We are now seeing 1.4. The last we had 1.5 in November.
No, I think it's 1.35.
Yes, when 1.35 crude, you also have the condensates. The condensate is our own key leveler. If you are we do 200 and something thousand condensates, and that is not under OPEX allocation quota. So and of course the price is just $2 difference. So we usually merge it when we are looking at our total production. So we have done 1.5 in I think in November. It fell to 1.3 in December. I am believing that since we are able to boost ramp up production from that low of 900 to 1.4, what's the process that helped us reach that threshold should be there, will be galvanized. And of course, the government knows that there is a need to achieve this target, of 1.7. I think we can. And we should be able to do it.
You asked the question, how does this whole budget translate to industrialization? I've been a bit concerned with that because pretty much, whether you like it or not, there are pillars that support industrialization. First, you look at skilled manpower. So that's where education comes in. So if we're putting a lot of money in education, that means you want an informed citizenry, you want skilled manpower, to infuse into your economy. You look at things like your market, access to market. So your ability to, support the infrastructure as regards when it comes to your export windows, being able to add value to the products that you have, are all still tied to, your infrastructure, the support you're providing to your infrastructure. So you're able to, take goods from the farm gates up until the export, corridors. Now you look at the next thing, which is what I call a project development stage. So you need that adequate knowledge to be able to, so that's where education comes in again, for you to be able to design what you need for you to be able to get the entire ecosystem to work. Then it brings me to the next one, efficiency. Now, efficiency within your system, I'm still talking about the pillars that support industrialization. So with that efficiency, so one, you must have your bureaucracy working. So you must have that understanding, then you must have that infrastructure that work. So everything now, links together to help you. Then again, the most important and critical one for me is the way you have been able to structure, your what technology transfer. Now, because some of this technology does not, exist within our sphere, that is where investment promotion comes in. So you're able to pull those who have the known knowledge or technology to come into your sphere, because foreign direct investment does not just come with monies, they also come with that transfer of technology. So when you have done your indexing to know which are the core areas you want to go into, look at our solid mineral sector. A lot has not happened in our solid mineral sector because it's not been governed properly to turn it to a cash and income generating a revenue generating ecosystem. So as we do that, you'll be able to find yourself increasing your FX, increasing your GDP. And then again, I always say this, you cannot do solid mineral without having a railway system, because some of these metals are so heavy they can't run on your roads. So the investment, the investment in our rail system, we need to intensify. So we are still speaking about infrastructure. Of course, power is very important. Like my colleague mentioned, the meeting with Siemens to see how we're going to boost energy consumption and the energy production, so that it will help in our industrialization. This will also help ease off the funds that we're talking about, because some of the people who are still importing a lot of raw materials here. Almost 80% of raw materials we use in Nigeria are all imported. The APIs in the pharmaceutical industries as the active pharmaceutical ingredients are all still gotten. We assemble as small as paracetamol in Nigeria. So until we're able to get these things to begin to work. So that's why I believe in the hope that is being brought into this budget. Again, don't forget, hope in the sense that now we have removed subsidy. So this is the first time we're having a budget cycle without subsidy. So we'll now know this is where we are. This is who we are. So we'll make our clothes according to our size.
All right, Yusuf, I want you to look at the private sector financing the budget deficit, and part of a large chunk of the funding is expected from the private sector, according to the breakdown. This is a private sector that is, burdened with, what they would call unfavorable, yes, monetary and fiscal policies. I mean, high interest rates, inflation is going and all that. So what do you think? How can, this budget address the issues that affect the private sector, such that they will be able to also meet up their own part of this deal?
It's like what we mentioned initially. Private sector to function requires first secure the environment, agri-processing industries that can attend to the domestic need required secured environment to make production. Processing industry requires energy to progress. Not only that, friendly policies, ease of doing business. Many investors are looking after our economy, but they are afraid of many factors. The MPR that is attracting them is not friendly because the central bank is not yet stabilized. But like I pointed out earlier, we have hope when these banks are recapitalized. Inflation has changed, interest rate is continuing to increase, and people's income continue to be eroded. No matter what you do, no matter how large market you have, if you have poor income groups, you cannot sell. Those who are consuming 3 kg of a production of semovita in Nigeria now can only consume 1. That brought inefficiency, that brought consumer confidence being eroded, that brought low taxes to the government, and it's a cycle at which you cannot attain growth And that is why we continue to have very slow growth rate, because you have 2.52, you are targeting 3.88, and you are targeting 6% in the next 3 years. Then you need to check holistically your friendly business policies, the economic environment, and also the intervention you are making. Don't make us borrow to consume. We borrow to invest. And when borrowing, it is high time to reduce our deficit. And we have seen a sign in 2024 budget, because the borrowing is reduced with above 13%. So if we continue to sustain that and we come with friendly policy, I think that our private sector will continue to flourish and at the same time also to increase. Reminding the fact that we cannot achieve perfect industrialization when we don't check our strengths. That special economic zones, which has been brought by the former administration, supposed to be sustained. We need to have laboratories to access what type of private businesses are thriving in the southeast.
All right, Shao,
yeah.
Thank you. Let's. You also talked about the issue of security.
Yeah.
We'll look at how how it affects the agricultural, non-oil sector. Yes, and what can be done in a short while. We'll just take a short break, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria.
Africa's beauty on the Gulf of Guinea, blessed with natural landmass and wildlife reserve.
Nigeria, largest economy in Africa. Nigeria, famous accomplishments in entertainment and sports.
Nigeria, resourced with globally respected human capital.
Our uniqueness lies in our tenacity, our acumen a testament of our success.
At NTA, we are all forever proud to be the showcase channel of this positive energy and reflection of the good in our nation.
The capacity to tell a nation's story will not have been possible without the support and patronage of the three arms of government.
Ministries, departments, agencies, corporate bodies, advertisers,
religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties,
and of course, you, our esteemed viewers.
Let's get set to make 2024
even greater. Together, Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
All right, welcome back. This is still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And we've been talking about the 2024 budget, which has been signed into law by the president. And our guests have been doing a yeoman's job. But let's see, gets to Niyi Akinseju again. I am always concerned about the common man. The common man.
There's no common man.
How does this put food on the table of the common man? Put money in the pockets of the common man? Yes, Mr. President has followed up by talking about a living wage. It also leaves the question of what is a living wage and will it be paid? And you also want to talk about refineries. Oh, Port Harcourt is up and running. How does this translate to, cheaper pump prices and people being able to put their vehicles on the road as we speak. A lot of people, vehicle owners, don't fancy it anymore. Nobody even wants to buy. It's become a liability. How do we get the common man into all of this to live?
For the purpose of declaration, I am a common man.
Okay. Welcome to the club. Debatable.
Well, I don't know
because she's a woman. She doesn't know about common woman.
Well, I know that the biggest challenge confronting the Nigerian common man is food. And that reflects in our inflation CPI, the Consumer Pricing Index. To a large extent, inflation food constitutes close to 70%. It used to be 50%. Now it's about 70% of average household expenditure. So it means that when a man or a woman earns 100,000 per month, for instance, such household spend close to 70,000, on food. So it's a major challenge. So what do we now review what government needs to do? Yes, I know for certain that there is a contemplation of employing 500,000 hectares of land newly in addition to what we have for food production. There is an encouragement of the Bank of Agriculture and other financial institutions to support agriculture. The level of achieving these targets are still, speculative. We can only conjecture, but I think there are how do I call it? There are direct interventions that are ongoing. But again, the major problem is that we have about 40 to 50% constituent of imported food inflation, because we still import a huge quantum of our food supply into the country. And as we go back to the forex rate again, the higher the rate, the higher the cost of importation of this food. So it's something that impacts us. But I am hoping we have the first basic factor of production into the agricultural line, land. We have that. However I want to use it, we have that. So it is just now for the federal government, and most importantly, I think that is where we need to percolate this policy. The local government should be actively engaged in the production, in facilitating food production, because that is the type of government that is nearer the subsistence farmer. Either we like it or not, 80% of food production is still dependent on subsistence farmers in Nigeria.
Maybe you should ask local government where they exist.
Are they allowed to exist?
Well, again, that is a systemic thing. And it would have to be addressed, because if we don't, there's no way we will issue policy positions in Abuja or even at the level of state capital that it will impact what is supposed to, that we achieve what is supposed to do in my village. My people in my village, 80% of them don't know the next local government. They don't know the state capital. I know people who had never stepped their feet in the state capital of my state. All they know is that 2 kilometers radius, that's where they have their hospitals. That's where they have their schools, whatever little businesses they do. That is what they are doing. That's where they have it. So we need, if the local government truly, I don't want to believe that there's no data yet. I'm a data-minded person. If truly they are not functional, it means the Yorubas will say, you, this man, this load you are carrying is bent. And he will tell you, look under, my feet are bent. So if we don't get the local government system correctly, most of the policies we are issuing at the metropolitan level, will not impact the grassroots.
The downtrodden. All right, Niyi, thank you. But again, Ogbonna and Yusha, everything still boils down again to security. Whether you are talking about electricity, if you don't have security, the equipment will be stolen. Whether I talk about pipeline, thieves will go there. You know, whether I talk about agriculture, food, of course, we know what is happening. So security is still paramount. And fortunately, since the tenure, you know, of the last administration, you know, President Muhammad Buhari, up to now, security has been getting lion's share of the national budget. But we still have, you know, violent cases of insecurity in different parts of the country. I mean, we all know what happened in Plateau. You know, Northeast, there's some relative quiet in, you know, the Northeast and the Northwest, you know, but the North Central and the Southeast.
Okay, so that brings me...
Yes, so what can be done, you know, such that this budget can make meaning?
Okay, so if you look at it, 12% of the total budget is being, you know, given to security when we are not at war with any country, right? So that simply means that there's an issue, because if you can imagine moving those funds to education, infrastructure, it will help us a lot. So in the wisdom of the 10th National Assembly, the Southeast Caucus came together, led by Honorable Benjamin Kalu, launched a program, a 5-year program called Peace in Southeast Project, PICE-P. Now, the Vice President came to represent the President in Bende, local government. That was on the 29th of December in Abia State. The Emir of Kano was there. The Sultan of Sokoto, represented by the Emir of Bichi. The Oni of Ife was there. Obi of Onitsha, who was like the host. There was a declaration that day, which is, we support peace. And what is PICE-P all about? PICE-P is about using a non-kinetic measure to solve the security issue. Because first of all, we're looking at ourselves. Why are we fighting ourselves? Be it IPOB, be it Igbo Ikenga, be it Ohanese, everybody is pointing at one thing. We are all beginning to affect ourselves. If the Southeast, from sit at home alone, is losing trillions of naira, and then a lot of assessment has been carried out, you know, to find a needs assessment. What are the issues? Engagement have been, you know, have gone on with the International Republican Institute. They've been there doing research every month to find out what are the issues. These are basic issues. People don't feel they are part of a nation. Why? Because you're not giving them the right infrastructure, they're not being engaged. So these things are the things that, you know, dovetail into agitations. So now we're using a, you know, this 8-pronged approach. Let's provide those infrastructure. Let's engage our people with better education. Look at it. How can we forget the Eba Boy system, which is a global, now global apprenticeship system in the Southeast? Everybody's forgetting that that exists. Now, the Harvards of this world are beginning to study that system. Tomorrow, they will borrow it and restructure it, and it begins to work elsewhere. So we're looking at how to revamp those kind of systems. So both formal and informal education system, that is paramount, that is peculiar with people in the Southeast. 3, we're looking at the entertainment industry. We're looking at culture and tourism. So the list goes on and on. Like I said, there are 8 pillars we're using. So if we are able to work this out and then begin to engage, because some of the people who evangelize to this order to radicalize them, tell them simple things that they can actually touch. For example, we're good, we're big in business in the Southeast, we're big in importation in the Southeast, and there's no single seaport around the South.
Yes, but how can we escalate this to other regions? I know that the Nigeria Military Civil Relations, you know, department, it's engaging, you know, the at the various community levels. They've been going and, you know, having conversations on how to, you know, better military civil relations and all that. But how can, you know, the different security operatives, you know, apply, you know, the same strategy that is being used? Yes.
No, that's why it's becoming an acceptable way, because I mean, even the NSA office have actually embraced it. They say, one, if it works in the Southeast as it's beginning to work, because I mean, the campaign is up and running. Everybody's seeing the engagement. Everybody's interested. Nobody wants to spend money to kill one another. Nobody wants to allocate funds for, you know, to maiming your own people. So if he's working in the southeast, he worked in Niger Delta. Yes, of course, we might not have gotten it so well during Yaradua, but I mean, we tried and it worked because I mean, they said, everybody drop your guns, let's have an interaction, let's have an engagement. So that's the conversation.
That's amnesty.
Amnesty.
But they started working in the southeast though, because the sit at home hasn't ended.
No, it's still in progress.
So it was
in
just launched
progress.
on the 29th.
It's just in progress.
We've been working for the past 6 months. And I tell you, the National Assembly, the 10th National Assembly, the Southeast Caucus, they've given so much support to this program. And then they are leading from the front. Benjamin Kali is out there saying, Udo Kama, we must bring peace.
But amnesty has been a contested strategy among various security risk management experts. You sir, you want to wade in here? You said you're not listening. I said amnesty has been a contested strategy among various risk management experts. As a measure to probably curb insecurity, especially in the northeast, northwest, and north central.
You see, peace has a cost, and then that cost, instead of using it to prolong agitation, to prolong disagreement, make an investment, engage. You see, you cannot allow people to be unemployed. You cannot allow people to be looking for what to eat and still expect. You see, amnesty, Yaradua context of amnesty came with a ministry.
Okay.
But is the ministry discharging the responsibilities to sustain the amnesty? Amnesty brought Niger Delta Commission. We all saw what transpired in the National Assembly with the commission. But however,
we've also seen the Northeast Development Commission.
Yes, and we have seen.
No, it brought the office of the NDC came before.
Before that, exactly.
Ministry of Niger Delta.
Niger Delta. So, but what I'm trying to say is that yes, it can be an option, and it has been proposed, but it cannot work in all aspects because agitations are different. The Northwest context, amnesty is not even understood and cannot be accepted because the actors don't even know what they are looking for. Do you understand?
We're all looking for how to address the insecurity such that the environment will be safe for both the private sectors and all the players that have a role to play in the implementation of this budget. That's why we're looking at this.
But then I'm not sure that the absence of peace is why our budgets don't perform optimally. I don't think so.
That's a different issue.
Look at.
Yes,
but it's true. How we can get this budget to perform better than the one before it.
It's also security.
Exactly.
If we are not producing the expected projected quantity of crude oil, which as a standalone constitute about 45% of projected income, it will lead to underperformance. Underperformance just simply means that we didn't earn enough money to implement the projected expenditure. That is one. Then two, I think the approach so far to managing insecurity is wrong. Yes, we need enough armament, which impressively the federal government is doing. Ogbonna talks about the deputy speaker leading a group of people. It's wrong. At the heart of community engagement are the communities. What we do in Nigeria is intervention. See, the communities have their own cultures, have their own expectations. And for each community, there are different profiles of expectations and how to go about them. But we from Abuja or from the state capital, we just go there and tell them our agenda. We don't ask them for their agenda. It should start from the agenda of the communities. It can be complex, it can be complicated, but there are ways to do these things, you know. It's a process of allowing the voice of the community to amplify the needs of the community in the first instance, before you even know how to address the challenges of the communities.
On the other hand, that's on the contrary, this is actually is the other way around. That's why I said the communities were, you heard me mention Ohaneze, you heard me mention Akikenga. Those are the town unions. Those are the people the engagements have been on. In partnership with the International Republican Institute, we have been engaging these people monthly for the past 1 year. As we speak, the communities are speaking. That's why I told you the issue of infrastructure, of seaports, did not come from Abuja. It came from the fact that people who are being pulled to come into some of this radicalization said, we are being told that, see, our people are traders, okay, and then we don't have a seaport. So it didn't come from Abuja, it came from them. So that's what I'm saying. The interactions we're having, which is why everybody's embracing what we're doing, is the fact that it's actually organic. Everybody is engaging right now.
Yes, we are running out of time. Where is the place of technology in all of this? Because, you know, at a time, the Gulf of Guinea Coast, was number 2 or so in terms of piracy.
Number 1.
Number 1. With the introduction of the deep, I think it's
blue economy.
No, not
deep blue project.
Deep blue project. You know, I don't think we've recorded any, any attack, on that Gulf. So that shows that application of technology can also be very, very useful in dealing with insecurity, especially when it comes, to pipeline, vandalism, crude oil theft, and banditry.
Well, if I should come in here, yes, technology very, very important, but I still go back to the people. In fact, we should commend the authors of the Petroleum Industry Act. Embedded in that act is the 3% turnover by all
communities,
oil companies, to communities. Now. But for me, I have not seen how that had translated, to pacifying the communities. And this, again, is part of the approach I'm talking about. The communities are expecting 3%. Whoever are managing this 3%, one way or the other, are sidetracking the communities. And the communities are not feeling belong. There's no way you put technology on the pipelines. If the communities are not protecting those pipelines, the technology would be abbreviated, will be breached, will be destroyed, because it will be with the active connivance of the communities. See, to drill a hole into some, what do you call it, into some pipelines, takes every instrument. It's not just that you go there, it takes every instrument. Sometimes these pipelines are buried more than 6 feet down. So you will need to dig out and then carry your equipment. You have villagers and all that will see you doing all these things. Until the villagers are conscientized enough to understand that they have a stake in these things, in the protection of these things, we won't be able to achieve much.
I'll give an example from what happened. In 2005, I led the company who bought over LMA Petrochemicals in Dorama Group, and then they bought over LMA Petrochemicals. Now, we designed a model which is still working till tomorrow. The community owns 5% of LMA Petrochemicals as we speak, LMA community. So everything you do, every agitation you hear in the Niger Delta, nothing ever goes wrong in LMA Petrochemicals. The company still continues to work.
Precisely. So, I know that. I can testify to that because I was in Rivers State. But just in 60 seconds, Yushak, the president said implementation will be measured. And whoever does not meet the mark...
And the National Assembly said they will monitor. And that is a subject of efficiency and accountability. And that is what we are expecting. But however, monitoring and reporting, evaluating and reporting, whatever that the president has received as report, the Nigerians need to know the report.
Victor.
Well, I would have loved to talk about performing ministers underperforming who will be shown the door, but it's okay. We'll leave that for another day. I guess we're going to get.
Sorry about it. Yes. All right. Let's of course do extend our appreciations. Yes.
Lydia Kishiju.
Yes.
Financial analyst. We thank you very much for coming on the program.
Pleasure as always.
Of course, we have Obona Kuku and Yushao Aliyu. We say a very big thanks for joining us on this episode of Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Foreign. Okay, let's take a look at development on the foreign scene. And Japan is going through some very heartbreaking, time. It's of course earthquake hit central Japan yesterday.
Unrelenting bombardment rocked Gaza on Monday, while an army spokesman warned that the war will continue throughout 2024. Israel's defense minister, who met with troops inside Gaza, vowed that life will return to its course for residents of border communities hit in the Hamas October 7 attacks that triggered the war. In central Gaza, residents were seen inspecting the damage and searching for survivors under the rubble. The Israeli military spokesman also said that some of the 300,000 Israeli reserve soldiers will be gradually released. The bloodiest ever Gaza war was triggered by Hamas' October 7 attacks on Israel, which resulted in the deaths of around 1,140 people, most of them civilians. Japanese rescuers are battling against the crack and powerful aftershocks to find survivors of a major earthquake that struck on New Year's Day, killing at least 30 people and causing widespread destruction. The 7.5 magnitude quake, which hit Ishikawa Prefecture on the main island of Honshu, triggered tsunami waves more than a meter high, toppled buildings, caused a major fire, and tore apart roads. As daylight broke, the scale of the destruction on the Noto Peninsula emerged with buildings still on fire, houses flattened, fishing boats sunk or washed ashore, and highways hit by landslides. Local authorities put the death toll at 30, but the number is expected to rise.
All right, quite unfortunate for Japan there, but we always pray for them and also those in Israel and Hamas. Yes. All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us again tomorrow. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
And I am Victor Azur. Do have a pleasant day ahead and enjoy your day.